Welcome. My name is Christopher Bailey, and I am an implementation consultant for Green Orbit, the intranet with everything built in. In this tutorial, we're going to see how to add website users and admin users to your intranet site. Are you ready? Let's get started. So as we're looking at the back end of our intranet site, we want to go over here to our Application Explorer. Now in the Application Explorer, in order to access where your website users will be added, you want to go into your administration. Now, when you open up administration, you see that you have admin users and website users. Now, it's very important for me to note here that you must first add your users as a website user before you can add them as an admin user. So let's go ahead and start by adding our website user. Now, when you open up website user, you're going to see that there are a couple of options in here where you have website user groups. Now, of course, we're not going to use the website user groups because this is just one area that you create groups that you want to add your website users to. We want to start with by first adding a website user. So we open up this wizard and we see here that it gives us the option to add in our information. So the first thing you want to do is go ahead and add in your given name. So let's go ahead and put Joe Smith. Joe. Now we want to go ahead and type in Smith as his last name. Now, you can add the job title if you desire, but it's not necessary. So we want to go ahead and put Joe as an IT trainer. Next, we want to go ahead and put Joe's email address because you're definitely going to need his email address. And let's go ahead and put joe.smith@greenorbit.com. Okay. Now, phone number. Again, this area is not mandatory, but of course, it's always an option. Okay. Next is a mobile phone. Again, not an option, but it's not mandatory, but it can definitely be an option if you want it to be. Okay. All right. And then a fax number, of course, that's just an option as well. Now, I want to point this out as we are adding our personal details here. The only area that is mandatory is your given name, last name, and email address. Those are the only areas that are mandatory. The job title, phone numbers, and the mobile number, those are just optional if you want to add that information. Now, if you are using Active Directory, which is very important for me to mention, this information will be pulled in from your Active Directory. If you're on the cloud and you're using Active Directory, when the user logs in for the very first time, their profile will then be created. But this is if we're manually adding our website users, okay? All right, so we're going to click Next. Next, we have our user details. Now, of course, this is their username that's going to be automatically created. Now, you see here where it says generate automatically. You can turn that off and you can simply create the username that you want them to have. But from an automatic perspective, this is what's going to populate. Next is the password that's going to populate. Now, again, you can generate this password or you can create your own. So in this particular sense, let's just go ahead and create a very simple password. We're just going to say password 0101. Okay. And then we're going to put an exclamation point behind it. So this is our password 0101 exclamation point. Now I can decide if I want this password to expire. Again, it's not a mandatory option, but it just gives you a little bit more flexibility when you're working with your users. Next, you always want to make sure that this little box is checked for making the user active. And then, of course, if you want to go ahead and create a default pathway, you can always do that here by selecting. If you had more options here, you can select a pathway and then put the URL path that you want that to be set to. All right, these are not mandatory, but of course, these are just options here. We want to go ahead and click Next. Now, this is where if you was adding to a user group, of course, if you had website user groups that you had created, this is where you would add those groups here and you would add this user to that group. We don't have any, so we just want to go ahead and click Next. Now you see here that we are on our confirmation page. Now while we're here, it's very important to note that you have this option to send a notification email to the new user. Now, again, this is if you are adding these users manually. If you are using Active Directory, when they log in, their user profile will be created automatically because it's pulling from the Active Directory. All right. But being that we're doing this from a manual perspective, you want to send this email notification because the email notification is going to give them all the information that you have created in the user details. It's going to give them their username and their password for them to log into the intranet. And then you click finish. Now, once this is done, you see here that these are all the users. Of course, this is a demo site that we're looking at, but you see here that these are the users that are created. If I go and look for Smith, I can see here, if I go back to, let me see, I go to 2, maybe I can find it in 2. So if I go click on number 2 here, and if I'm looking for J. Smith, I can actually see that I've created him right here. J. Smith 01, Smith, Joe Smith, right there. Okay, so he has been created as a website user and he has access to the site. All right, now I want to add Joe Smith to be an admin user. So this is what I want to do next. So I come out of website user and I go into admin user. Now when I go into admin user, I have the option to edit an admin user that is already in the site, or I want to add one. In this case, we want to go ahead and add. So we add Joe. We're adding Joe Smith to the as an admin, and here's where we start. Now, of course, if I already know his username, I can go ahead and type it here. But let's just say I'm looking for him, for the very first time, and I go ahead and put in my wildcard, type in Joe, put in my wildcard again to close it off, and then I go search. Now it's going to search and pull up Joe Smith as a website user. I'm like, yes, that's who I want. I select him. You see here, it automatically pops his username up in the area here. Now I can check to see if this is a valid username, and it tells me that it is. So now I can move forward and click next. Now, this is the personal details information that has been populated when I created him as a website user. All right. So now, again, if this information is being pulled from Active Directory, this will already be populated, or it's going to pull from the website user that you added, and that information is here. Of course, you can always have this other information if you want to add it and, make their profile a little bit more robust. You have the option to do that here. Go ahead and click next. Now we go into our user details. Now, this is where it's very important to note here that this is the username that's being populated. Again, it's automatically being generated. You can change it if you want to make everything consistent and all one. Password is also the same thing. You can change a password to make it all one. So this password can be the exact same as the website user password. So if we go ahead and just type in password 0101 exclamation point, and we have this option here. We want to make sure they check this active. Now, this is very important because if he's an admin and you want him to have super user access, this will grant him access to all of the sites that are in the organization and within your intranet. Okay, so you go ahead and click make him a super user, click next. And then we have access where it tells us user access has full control to all subsites. We go ahead and click next. Now this is giving us an email notification. Of course, we want to send this email out, and then it lets us know this is our email. Going to Joe, let him know, hey Joe, this is your username and password for your admin, and we click next. And now we click finish. And now Joe has now been added as an admin user on the site. Now, as we're looking at our website users and our admin users, that is how easy it is to add your website users to the intranet. Okay. Now, one thing I want to point out, and this is just a note that we want to make sure that we provide everybody, the admin user in this particular sense has access to the back end of the intranet site. Okay, just because I have him set up as a super user admin, this means he can do anything he wants to do in the admin of the software. All right, this does not mean he automatically has access to do functionality on the front end of your intranet and on the home site. This just means he's an admin. He can go on the back site, the back end of the software, and make any kind of changes he wants to in the back end with configuration of these sites. If I want to make him a full control user on the site, then I would have to go into the subsite and grant him access. This provides a sense of security and governance for organizations, because once you add them in as an admin user, you don't want them to automatically have access to everything within your intranet. Maybe you want to grant them to be an admin, but you don't want them to have access to certain pages, or they don't need to have access to do anything on the front end, because all their functionality is going to be on the back end. So that's one way to actually manage your security on admin users and website users. So, but if I wanted him to have access to a specific subsite, then what I would do, I would go into my utilities. And this is just an extra tidbit that I'm offering you here in this training. So we go into our utilities, and then what we want to do, we want to go into subsites. So if I look down here, find I'm sorry, my subsites is right here. Go to my subsites, which are here. Click on edit. Now it's going to grant me all of my subsites that I have on my intranet. Now I want to go to the home site, and I want to grant Joe full control of everything on the subsite, home site. Go here, and you see here that Joe is not listed nowhere on here. The only person that's here is these individuals here. So what I want to do here is I want to go to add, and I'm looking for Joe. Go ahead and click my admin and my wildcard. Type in Joe, close my wildcard, search, and you see Joe is right there. Click on him, add him, and now I got to go down because he's going to be added with the default of read only. Go here, click on the box, make him a full control user, and hit OK. And now Joe is a full control user on the software on the home site only. Okay. Once this refreshes, you'll see that Joe only has access to the home site. If he logs in with his credentials, he would have access just like anybody else on the home site to make any changes that he sees and deems necessary. Okay. This concludes our training session for this module. For more information on Green Orbit and its functionality, please visit our Learn site at learn.greenorbit.com. Thank you so very much, and we look forward to seeing you on the next video.